Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time city limits. My family finally moved into the house that had eaten up nearly every dollar we'd saved. It was late October. The air was crisp, almost biting, and inside, the scent of fresh paint still hung faintly on the walls. For almost 3 years, my parents had thrown every weekend, every spare evening, into fixing up the place. When we bought it, it was a wreck, abandoned for who knows how long. Shattered windows, waterlogged ceilings, a roof that drooped like it had given up. But Dad, being a construction worker, insisted on doing it all himself. He called it our family project. I hated that house for most of those years. I was 15 when they bought it, and by the time we moved in, I was almost 18. Old enough to be done with the constant noise of drills and the taste of drywall dust. Still, the day we finally moved in, I remember standing in the living room and thinking, maybe now it'll feel like home. The neighborhood wasn't anything fancy, but it was solid, stable. The kind of place where people stayed long enough to know each other's routines. Folks waved from driveways and porches. A couple of them even brought over cookies that first day. Lily, my little sister, found a friend across the street by sundown. The welcome was warm, almost too warm, and for a while everything felt right. Then one morning, exactly at 5:03 a.m., something shifted. I woke up in that weird, sudden way where it feels like your brain forgot how to breathe. I wasn't scared, just dry-mouthed and wide awake. I slipped out of bed and padded barefoot down the creaky hall toward the kitchen. The sky was still black. I didn't bother turning on any lights. The kitchen has this wide window that faces the street. It's the first thing you see when you walk in. I filled a glass at the sink and casually glanced outside. That's when I saw him. A man stood beneath the streetlight across the road. He wasn't jogging. No dog. Just slowly pacing, back and forth, arms stiff at his sides like he didn't quite know what to do with them. He moved with the kind of deliberateness that puts your nerves on edge. And then, he stopped. He tilted his head and looked straight up. At me. I dropped below the window like someone had fired a shot. My heart slammed against my ribs. I waited, breathing shallow before slowly peeking back out. He was walking away now. Calm, unbothered, like nothing had happened. I told myself it was nothing. Just a neighbor maybe, a worker heading out early. My brain offered excuses, but none of them settled right. I didn't tell my parents, didn't mention it to Lily. But that was the first time I saw him. Summer came. School ended. We slipped into the lazy rhythm of June. Work, chores, late-night movies. I forgot about the man under the streetlight. Until I didn't. It was around 3 a.m. when I shot awake to the sound of the dogs going ballistic downstairs. Daisy and Roscoe, both rescues, both loud as hell over nothing, were snarling and barking like the world was ending. I stumbled down, whisper shouting at them to knock it off before they woke Dad. They didn't even glance at me, just kept barking, hackles up, eyes locked on the window. I followed their gaze, and there he was. Same man, same streetlight, same blank, heavy stillness. Only this time, he wasn't pacing. He was just standing there, watching. Not the neighborhood, not the sky. Our house. His body was pointed directly at the living room like he was waiting. Or listening. I don't even remember flipping the light on. It just happened. He turned the moment it did, slowly without any urgency, and walked down the street again, fading into the dark. I stood frozen for almost a full minute before I forced myself back upstairs. I woke Dad, told him everything. He barely opened his eyes, just grunted something about some weirdo and told me to let him know if I saw the guy again, then rolled over and went back to sleep. That was it. No concern, no questions. A week ago, around 9:45 p.m., I was in the backyard alone. My parents were out late helping my aunt move and Lily was at a sleepover. I was hauling boxes out of a rental storage pod we'd finally gotten around to emptying. Most of the stuff in there was junk. Old lamps, cracked plastic bins, a busted fan, but I needed my guitar case. A friend wanted to borrow it, and I'd told him I'd bring it by tomorrow. I was dragging a heavy box out across the yard when Roscoe started barking inside the house. Loud, urgent. Not his usual, "Hey, a bird exists" bark. Daisy joined in seconds later, and that's when I froze. Something in me just knew. I straightened up slowly, spine stiff with dread, and turned toward the front of the house. He was there again. Same man, same stance. Only this time he wasn't standing across the street under the safety of that flickering streetlight. He was closer, on our sidewalk, facing the house. He didn't move, didn't twitch. I couldn't even tell if he was looking at me or the windows. Just this eerie stillness, like he was part of the scenery. But I could feel him watching. Adrenaline surged like a live wire. I dropped the box and bolted inside, heart in my throat. I didn't even think. Just yanked open the coat closet, grabbed the metal baseball bat, and threw open the front door. He was still there. Same spot. Unmoving. "Hey!" I shouted, voice cracking. "Hey! Get the hell out of here!" The second I yelled, he spun around and ran. Fast. Like a sprinter. Like he'd rehearsed it. He was gone before I could get past the driveway, just vanished into the dark. By the time my parents got home, I was still shaken, I never see him arrive. Our house overflowed with hand-me-down clothes, paper bag lunches, and constant noise. Always noise. We were what folks called a big family, the kind where the fridge was never fully closed and the screen door slammed a dozen times an hour in the summer. We didn't have a lot, but we had each other, and Max, our Rottweiler mix who acted more like a grumpy bodyguard than a pet. We weren't allowed to wander far, 2 blocks, tops, and never alone. If I wanted to go somewhere, one of my older brothers had to come with me. When they got tired of babysitting, Max was the fallback. He'd trail behind, silent and alert, like he understood his job. My parents weren't paranoid, just careful. Because of him. Everyone in the neighborhood knew about the man in the blue house with the jungle of a front yard. He was old, gray hair slicked back tight, always wore the same dirty windbreaker no matter how hot it got, lived by himself, drove a rust-colored sedan that wheezed more than it ran. He had this way of watching you too long, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. Nobody knew his real name. My brothers called him Creeper Carl, though that probably wasn't it. He lived on Hazel Drive, right where it crossed Sycamore at the end of our block. Next door to him were Don and Nancy Barrett, the polar opposite. Everyone loved them. No kids of their own, but they treated the whole neighborhood like family. Birthday parties in their yard, crisp $5 bills for raking leaves or watering plants, and cold lemonade after swimming in their above-ground pool during those scorching July afternoons. Don was a retired firefighter, big, loud, kind. Nancy ran a home bakery. The smell of cinnamon and sugar followed her like a perfume. They were the kind of adults kids actually wanted to be around. My parents trusted them completely. When the older kids had school stuff or jobs, I'd stay at the Barretts. I'd help Nancy bake or hand Don screwdrivers while he organized his tools in the garage. He watching me that day. Don offered him $10 to help set up tables and watch the cash box while people browsed. I was 7, still obsessed with Barbies, still convinced a stick and some dirt could become an entire world. I sat on the porch steps, knees tucked to my chest, brushing Barbie's tangled hair with the tiny pink comb that never worked. People came and went. Someone bought a lamp. Someone else bought an old toolbox. I barely noticed. Caleb was inside helping Don carry out a coat rack. Nancy was chatting with a woman arguing over the price of a vintage toaster. Then I saw him, the man from Hazel Drive. He looked older in the sunlight. Paper-thin skin, hollow eyes, lips curled like damp cardboard. He walked slow, scanning the tables like a bored shopper, hands in his pockets. He didn't touch anything. Then his gaze settled on me. He crouched, too close. I went still. "Pretty girl," he said. He grinned wide, eyes darting around like he was sharing a joke with someone I couldn't see. "How much for her?" he said. I didn't scream right away. My throat locked, my skin went cold. And then, warmth. I'd wet myself. It trickled down my legs and shame hit me before the fear even had a chance. Then the fear came. I screamed, loud, again and again. "Caleb, Mr. Don, help!" The man didn't flinch, just stood there, watching, like I was the one who'd done something strange, like he was entertained. Caleb came flying out the front door so fast he nearly missed the last step. Don was right behind him, fists clenched, jaw tight. Caleb scooped me up like I was weightless and bolted down the street, one arm wrapped under my legs, the other cradling my head. I buried my face in his shoulder, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Don stayed. I don't know what he said to the man. I never asked. All I remember is the way he stood, between me and that house like a wall. The cops never came. No wings. And all because of one sentence. How much for her? Years later, when I was 17, I found out we weren't the only ones. Rachel, she lived 2 blocks over, told me one night at a bonfire that she remembered him too. Said he used to sit in his car by the playground, engine off, just watching. Another boy from down the street said the man once offered him candy when he was biking home from school. No one ever reported it. No one had proof. Just rumors, whispers. The kind of fear that lives in the back of your throat, too quiet to shout, too loud to ignore. The Barretts moved when I was in high school. Don had a stroke. They left to be closer to family. Their house was sold to a young couple with a baby. The blue house stayed empty after Creeper Carl died. I heard he passed in his sleep, alone. But the story didn't end there. Because the horror didn't die with him. It stayed. It stays. I flinch when someone touches my shoulder unexpectedly. I avoid eye contact with older men. I triple-check the lock before bed. I check my back seat before I drive. I learned to carry keys between my fingers like claws. Some people think horror is ghosts, monsters, shadows moving wrong. But the real horror is a man crouching in the sun, looking you dead in the eyes and asking for your worth like you're something to be bought. The real horror is realizing your safe place, your neighbor's porch, your brother just a room away, the Barbie doll in your hand, isn't enough to keep the world from twisting into something grotesque. And the scariest part? Sometimes the monster lives 2 houses down. Sometimes he dies quietly in a bed no one checks for days. No sirens, no screams, just stillness, just silence, just an empty blue house. Epilogue. I live in the city now. Apartment complex with cameras and gated entries. I don't have kids yet, but I already know the rules I'll make. No going out alone, no talking to strangers, even the kind ones. Never, ever, walk near the blue house. Because even though this isn't Sycamore Street, even though that man is long gone, I know somewhere, someone else is living on someone else's Hazel Drive. And somewhere a little girl is brushing her Barbie's hair on a porch, seconds away from hearing something that will echo through the rest of her life. And that's what horror really is. I never thought anything bad would happen in that apartment. It was nothing fancy, small, quiet, just far enough from downtown to avoid sirens and drunk college kids, but still close enough to get to work without hating life. After a messy breakup that left me feeling like a shell, I needed something, anything, to feel like a fresh start. Havley Court Apartments, Building C, Unit 3B felt like that. It wasn't modern. The hardwood floors were worn thin in spots. The blinds had gone yellow with age, and the pipes groaned every time the heat kicked on. But it had charm. The hallway always smelled faintly like cinnamon and old paint, like someone had tried once to make it feel warm. Lived in, yeah, but not haunted. I'm Aaron. I'm 27 now, but I was 25 when I moved in. Rent was cheap, which meant utilities were included and expectations were low. Mrs. Kirkland, the landlord, was this sharp-tongued woman in her late 60s. She had the kind of memory that could tell you your rent due date and your mother's maiden name without checking a single file. Not warm, but not mean either. She scared me a little, honestly, but in a dependable way. I signed the lease in August, one of those muggy afternoons where the air sticks to your skin and you just want to sit in front of a fan until fall shows up. I moved in the next weekend. My unit faced a narrow alley. That meant it stayed dim most of the day. Shadows draped across the walls like permanent wallpaper. I kind of liked that. It felt like a place where I could disappear for a while, and that was the whole point. I didn't talk to many neighbors. There was the couple across the hall, mid-30s, always mid-argument. Their voices bled through the walls, some nights like angry whispers. Above me was a guy with the heaviest footsteps I've ever heard. It sounded like he dropped bowling balls just for fun. And then, there was the man down the hall. 3 doors down, I think. Quiet. Tall. Thin. Wore a navy jacket like it was stitched to his skin, even in the middle of a heat wave. We didn't talk. We barely even nodded. Maybe exchanged a quick hey once or twice. But there was something about him that never sat right with me. Something I told myself not to overthink. Then came that Friday night in July. The kind of heavy, humid night where you don't even want to open the windows. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket and popcorn, watching Zodiac on my laptop. Lights off, just the flicker of the screen casting shadows across my living room. It was a slower part of the movie, some scene where everyone's talking in low, serious tones. I was close to nodding off when I heard something. Click. A small, metallic sound. I paused the movie and sat up. Then a rattle, more distinct this time. The doorknob. My doorknob. I froze. Not someone knocking, not calling out. Someone was turning it, testing it. I couldn't move at first. My heart thudded so loud it almost drowned out the sound. Then I got up quietly and padded barefoot across the floor. The apartment was tiny, maybe 8 feet from couch to front door, so I didn't have far to go. I leaned in and looked through the peephole. There he was, navy jacket, face tilted down, laser focused on the knob like he was trying to figure out the mechanism. No fumbling, no drunken swaying. He was deliberate, calm. His hands moved like he'd done this before, like he knew exactly what he was trying to do. It was him, the guy from down the hall. My mouth went dry. I didn't know what the hell to do. Should I shout? Call someone? I just stood there, watching him through the fisheye lens. I leaned in closer, maybe too close, because the door creaked slightly under my weight. He looked up, right at the peephole, right at me. We locked eyes, or at least I think we did. He didn't jump or act startled. He just slowly backed away, one step at a time. Then I heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway. A few seconds later, the faint sound of a door closing. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with every light on, checking the peephole every 10 minutes like some nervous animal waiting for a predator to come back. He didn't. Not that night. The next morning I told myself a story, that maybe he was drunk, confused, wrong door. It happens, right? That's what I wanted to believe. I had to go on with my day, pretend like life was normal. At around 9 a.m., I walked into the kitchen to make coffee. I passed the door on the way, and then I heard it. Clink. Soft. Metal on metal. Like a key, or something like it. I froze. Not again. I moved to the peephole, heart already hammering. And there he was. Same guy. Same navy jacket. Standing at my door again. No knocking. Just the sound of the handle turning again. Slow. Intentional. Like he was testing it one more time before walking off. No hesitation. No fumbling. Just turned and strolled away down the hall like he'd checked his mail or taken out the trash. I stood there, barely breathing, one hand clenched around the curtain next to the door, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. That wasn't someone drunk. That wasn't someone confused. That was something else entirely. Calm. Calculated. A few days passed without any sign of him, but the hallway felt different after that. I started noticing the silence more, the way footsteps echoed too long, how doors took just a second too long to close. I avoided going out after dark. I started clipping my pepper spray to my key ring, just in case. At night, I wedged a wooden chair under the doorknob, not because I thought it would really stop anyone, but because I needed to feel like I was doing something. I lived alone, so there wasn't anyone to bounce my thoughts off, no one to say, "Yeah, that's weird," or "You're overthinking it." It was just me. Then one morning, a little after 7, I stepped out to head to work, and there he was. We were walking toward each other down the hall, only about 10 feet apart before I noticed him. My pulse jumped. I thought about ducking back into my apartment, pretending I forgot something, but it was too late. He was already looking at me. He smiled. just slightly. "Hey," he said casually, like we were neighbors who chatted all the time. "Sorry about the other night. I think I might have confused your door for mine after going out. Bit of a blur, honestly. Hope I didn't freak you out." He said it like it was no big deal, like we were laughing off an awkward run-in in the laundry room. I wanted to say something, anything. I wanted to ask why he'd come back the next morning, why he kept trying the handle like he knew I was in there. I wanted to say that his apartment was 3 doors down on the other side of the building, that there was no way he could have gotten confused, but I didn't. I forced a tight smile. "Oh, no worries. It's all good." He nodded and kept walking. I stood still until he turned the corner, then slipped back inside and locked the door behind me, my hands shaking. My brain wouldn't stop looping it. He hadn't slurred a word. He didn't look hungover. And that smile, calm, controlled, like he was already 10 steps ahead, like he knew I wouldn't push back. Another week passed. I tried to move on. Nothing else happened. No more late-night visits, no sounds at the door, nothing. I almost convinced myself I was overreacting. Then came the night everything changed. It was just after 11 p.m. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone in the dark. The apartment was still, quiet enough that I could hear the soft hum of my fridge through the wall. Then, knock, soft. Not loud or rushed, just a careful, deliberate tap. I froze. Then came another. Same rhythm. I sat up slowly and let my phone slip onto the blanket beside me. I listened. My body was still, but my mind had already gone into overdrive. I moved quietly to the front door, every creak in the floor feeling louder than it should have. I leaned in, looked through the peephole. He was there. Again. His hand rested against the door, his head tilted just slightly, eyes scanning the frame like he was trying to see through it. The knock had softened, but it was steady, close. He wasn't standing back the way people do when they expect you to answer. He was right there, inches away. I shifted my weight without thinking. The door creaked. He moved instantly, darted sideways out of view, pressing himself just around the corner like he was hiding. I didn't move. Seconds ticked by, 20, 30. Then he reappeared, stepped back into view. it was, just stood beside me and said quietly, I'll put one behind the damn bird bath if I have to. She was sitting at the kitchen table, arms folded, her face pale with worry. You really think it's someone around here? Has to be, I said, stopping to meet her eyes. No one else would care enough to dig this up. Not some random punk scrolling through criminal records. This is personal. Claire hesitated. Should we go to the HOA? I shook my head immediately. Absolutely not. That's the last thing we do. You know how people are around here. All it takes is one whisper, one email chain, and suddenly we're the cautionary tale. See? This is why you don't let those people in. So we got to work. Within 48 hours, I'd pulled in favors from my job. Discrete high-res cams, infrared night vision, audio triggers. Our house stopped being a home. It being if maybe the scare had passed, maybe they'd moved on. Then came Friday night. Claire and the girls were asleep upstairs. I was in the den with the lights low, just watching the live feeds on my laptop. Background noise, more habit than hope. I was starting to drift when the mailbox cam tripped. 2:43 a.m. sharp. I sat bolt upright. He wasn't subtle this time. Tall, thin, probably 17 or 18. Hoodie half slipped back. No gloves. I could see his face. Blonde hair, skin blotched with acne along his jawline. When he slipped the note into the mailbox, he turned just enough for the lens to catch him full on. I froze the frame, enhanced it, printed it. I knew that kid. Not by name, but by sight. I'd seen him a dozen times messing around with his little crew near the park. Loud, careless. I never once thought he was watching me. I didn't call the cops. I got dressed. Walked. His name was Tyler Martin. Parents lived over on Redbridge Lane, 2 streets down. Their lights were still on when I got there. They answered quick. Maybe they'd seen me on their ring cam, or maybe they were just used to teenage drama knocking at the door. Mr. Martin opened up, mid-40s, gray at the temples, sweatpants and a robe. He looked surprised, then guarded. Can I help you? Yeah, I said, keeping my voice calm. I need to talk to you about your son. They bristled immediately. Standard defense posture. I could see it in their faces, like they thought I was about to accuse Tyler of stealing candy or egging a car. I came straight at him. But this ends tonight. He started shaking. Hands, knees, everything. He couldn't meet my eyes. What the hell is going on? Mr. Martin snapped. It was for a video, Tyler mumbled, eyes locked on the floor. Me and some friends were doing this true crime thing. Local stories, like real stuff. We thought it'd be cool to find someone in the neighborhood who had, like, a past, a record. I stared at him. And the vandalism? I asked. Spray paint on my house? That was part of the fun too? No, that wasn't me. That was Jason. I just wrote the notes. Claire had been right. It was a group. What was the plan? I asked. Keep escalating? Keep poking until something broke? He didn't answer, so I gave him options. Option 1, I turn over the footage, press charges, vandalism, harassment, mail tampering, trespassing, the whole list. Option 2, he pays for the damages, stays the hell away from my family, and I keep the footage, not as leverage, as insurance. Mr. Martin asked if I'd delete the video if they paid. No, I said. I want something in my pocket just in case. They didn't like it, but they agreed. The next day, Tyler showed up with both parents. He didn't say a word, just handed me a check, eyes downcast. Claire and I took the girls to the park while they repainted the garage and cleaned up the mess in the yard. Ours was the kind of neighborhood where shoes stayed untouched on porches, garden gnomes collected dust in peace, and kids painted the sidewalks with pastel chalk, hopscotch grids, suns with crooked smiles, stick figures with hearts for eyes. We moved to Fairview a little over a year ago, just far enough from the city that you could breathe without hearing sirens, but close enough that the skyline still peeked over the hills on a clear day. I chose this place for my daughter, Ellie. I wanted her to grow up somewhere slow and soft, somewhere I didn't have to flinch every time I heard a car idle too long outside. For a while, it felt like I'd made the right call. My husband and I found a 2-bedroom place with a lopsided deck and a backyard wrapped in weathered fencing. I added chickens to the mix, picked up a second-hand coop off Marketplace and filled it with a noisy trio I named after famous writers, Bronte, Austen, Atwood. Ellie loved them instantly. She'd throw handfuls of feed and try to hug their feathery rumps. She was only 2, all babble and bounce, but smart. Too smart. She figured out how to drag a chair to the back door and unlatch the screen on her own. Cute at first. Less cute the third time I found her toddling around barefoot in the garden before breakfast. Saturday morning, 8:17 a.m. "Ellie?" I called, stepping around a pile of couch cushions she'd turned into a makeshift obstacle course. The back screen door was open again, creaking on its hinge, and the chair was pushed up against the knob. That punch of dread landed right in my chest. She was outside. I sprinted through the kitchen, my heart jerking into my throat. Panic always arrived fast when it came to her, like my body knew something my brain didn't yet. Then I saw her, barefoot, her tiny ponytail lopsided, bouncing down the deck stairs with those frantic cartoon arms. The way she moved always reminded me of a wind-up toy with no off switch. "Ellie, wait for Mommy," I yelled, yanking on my sneakers without bothering to tie them. She shrieked with laughter and bolted across the yard straight toward the chicken coop. I was closing the distance, breath catching in my throat, when the first gunshot cracked the air. Then another. Then another. Gunshots don't sound like they do in movies. They don't echo all dramatic and slow. They snap, loud and flat and sudden, like a door slamming open inside your skull. 3 shots, maybe 4. I couldn't keep count. My brain flooded with static. Noise, motion, instinct. A man burst into the alley behind our house. Close. So close I could see the glint of silver in his hand. A gun. I saw the stiff folds of his black pleather jacket, the way the green hoodie underneath whipped behind his neck as he ran. His face was young, barely old enough to vote, but it was his expression that froze me. Not fear, not rage, just focus. Cold, mechanical, like this was routine. Like he'd planned to hit the store, maybe grab lunch, shoot someone. I didn't think. I moved. I grabbed Ellie mid-stride, her little body jolting in my arms as she let out a surprised cry. I ducked behind the chicken coop, holding her to my chest, trying to cover every inch of her. The rough wood scraped against my forearms. I could feel her heartbeat pounding through my shirt, could hear her inhale just before the scream came, raw, high-pitched, terrified. "Shh, baby, shh," I whispered, but it was already too loud. I prayed he'd keep going, that he wouldn't hear, but he did. He changed direction, calm again. Walked, toward us, hopping my neighbor's low fence, the one right behind the coop. The gun hung loose in his hand like he hadn't decided what to do with it yet. His footsteps crunched over dry leaves. I didn't dare breathe. Ellie wailed into my chest. She didn't understand that she was telling him exactly where to look. He stopped. One hand on the neighborhood Facebook page while sipping coffee, reading about garage sales, missing cats, someone giving away baby clothes. Then came February. Someone's car window got smashed. Then another. Someone else heard yelling in the alley, said it sounded like a fight. Cops came once. Nothing came of it. Everyone chalked it up to teens or a fluke. Then a little girl, 9 I think, from a suburb 10 miles away, got caught in the crossfire of a daylight shooting at a playground. She died. We'd been at that same park the weekend before. Ellie climbing the jungle gym, waving at strangers, making up stories about the ducks in the pond. After that, I started locking the front door more. I added a latch to the back fence, but I still believed we were just being cautious. I didn't think danger could get this close, that it could have a face, that it could stand at your fence deciding. Saturday, 8:19 a.m. He didn't see us, not fully. Maybe he heard her and got spooked. Maybe the yelling from farther down the street pulled him away. I shifted slightly, back pressed so hard to the coupe that I could feel every screw in the wood. Ellie sobbed into my shirt, her small fingers gripping the collar. My mind was white hot with fear. I kept thinking, don't move. Don't make a sound. Don't let him see your face. Because if he did, if he saw me see him, he'd have to kill us. Not out of rage, out of logic. I'd be a witness, a loose end, and she'd just be collateral. He stood there for one long, unbearable second. That kind of second that expands, that wraps around your entire life. The kind you live inside. Then, like a string got pulled, he moved, and he was gone. He calmly slipped the gun into his jacket pocket like it was nothing more than a set of keys, unlatched my neighbor's gate, and ran, jumped another fence. Gone. Gone like he'd never been there at all. I clutched Ellie tighter than I ever had in my life and bolted back inside. My hands fumbled with the sliding glass door, finally slamming it shut, throwing the lock. Then the deadbolt. I yanked the curtains closed with jerky, shaking hands. Ellie cried harder now, more from my reaction than from the noise itself. Her tiny body trembled against me, confused and scared. I could feel her fear feeding off mine. Something was chasing us. Even if it was gone, it had left something behind, something I couldn't unfeel. I dialed 911 with a thumb that kept missing the buttons. They put me on hold. 10 minutes. I stared at the wall while the hold music droned like a lullaby written in hell. I remember checking the clock. 10:02 a.m. Finally, 2 officers pulled up, barely older than college kids. One asked questions, flipping through his notepad with bored fingers. The other poked around the alley, gun holstered, looking like he expected the shooter to jump out and yell, "Boo!" Mrs. Hargrove, my neighbor, had seen him too. She'd stepped out to take the trash and hit the ground the second the shots rang out. We both described the same thing. Black pleather jacket, green hood, silver gun, same route over the fence. Our stories matched perfectly. Still, the cops didn't look confident. They said they'd circle the area. They didn't promise. I used to think I had a pretty good read on people, especially the ones living around me. When Aaron and I moved into that 6-story walk-up in the Flatbridge neighborhood of Hartley, New Jersey, we were just relieved to have more space. It was this weathered old brick building, tucked a little off the main street, just far enough from the city that rent didn't bleed us dry, but still close enough that you could hear the distant rumble of the subway if you cracked a window at night. The building had that kind of forgotten charm: rusted stair railings, mailboxes that looked like they'd barely survived a bar fight, and a front vestibule where the only light came from a flickering bulb buried in cobwebs. We had apartment 6B, top floor. Decent view, lots of stairs. Not ideal after grocery runs, but we were used to city life. Before this, we crammed ourselves into a studio over in East Vernon, where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbor sneeze and then argue about it with their boyfriend for 2 hours straight. Compared to that chaos, Flatbridge felt almost peaceful. The building had its cast of regulars. Mrs. Lang in 2A always throwing breadcrumbs at the pigeons like she was running some underground bird buffet. Greg, the garlic-scented guy with a beat-up harmonica and a laundry room concert schedule no one asked for. And then there was this girl with green headphones who jogged the stairs like she was training for a stairwell Olympics. We didn't really know anyone. We nodded, exchanged haze, held doors open. You know, standard city etiquette, polite distance. Then, one random Tuesday, Aaron brought up the neighborhood registry. We were curled up on the couch, half watching some crime documentary, half scrolling through our phones. He muttered, "Bet there's some creep around here. Want to check the registry?" I laughed, rolled my eyes, but pulled it up anyway. The site loaded, showed a map dotted with little red markers, 4 within 5 blocks. One of them was right over our building. I tapped it. The profile loaded with this grainy mugshot, wild, greasy hair, hollowed-out eyes, this manic half-smile that made your skin itch. Name, Raymond C. Heller, age, 46, convicted of sexual assault on a minor. Over 10 years ago, served time, registered, now living legally on the premises. Unit unknown. Damn, I muttered, tilting the phone to show Aaron. He squinted. What? Why? There's someone at our door. Right now. A pause. I swallowed. Is it? I thought it was you at first, but I checked the peephole. It's the fruit stand guy. His voice cracked. He's naked. I didn't respond. I literally couldn't. My mouth already tapping my driver's shoulder. Pull over. I'm not. Don't come in the front, Aaron said again. Then he hung up. I sat there in the car, frozen, suddenly wide awake. The cab driver, Vince, was a broad, thick-necked guy with a gravelly voice and a faded Yankees cap. He'd picked me up from the office plenty of times before. He knew my schedule, usually kept to himself. But this time, as I stared blankly out the window, I felt his eyes flick over to me in the mirror. You all right? He asked, his voice low but concerned. I hesitated. There's a naked man at my apartment door. Vince blinked like he wasn't sure he'd heard me right. You want me to walk you up? I nodded. I didn't even care how it sounded, I just needed someone there. When we pulled up, everything looked normal. The stoop was empty. The fruit stand was gone. The block was quiet in that eerie, too clean kind of way, like someone had scrubbed away the evidence. Vince walked me up the steps, staying just a half step behind. Aaron opened the door almost immediately, his face pale and tense. In one hand, he held the crowbar we kept under the sink for emergencies, though I don't think we ever imagined this kind. I thought it was you, he said quickly, glancing over his shoulder. He tried to wedge himself in. I barely got the door shut. Did you call the cops? I asked. Yeah, they said someone was on the way. We stood there, me, Aaron, Vince, awkward and jumpy, like we were waiting for the next shoe to drop. Then we heard it. Footsteps, fast, slamming against the metal stairs, getting closer. "Let's go," Aaron muttered, grabbing my hand and pulling me toward the elevator. It was ancient, the kind of elevator that shuddered every time it moved. We mashed the call button over and over until the doors creaked open with a reluctant groan. The second they slid shut behind us, we both went completely still. The elevator climbed slowly, the motor whining like it hated its job. On the way up, we didn't say a word. At the third floor, the whole thing jolted slightly. That's when we heard it. Bang, bang, bang. Someone slamming their fists against the elevator doors from the hallway. I stared at the glowing number 3 known, frozen. Then came the footsteps again, not from the hall this time. Up the stairs. He was running, fast. We pressed the door close button so hard I thought the plastic might snap. Finally, the doors sealed, and the elevator groaned back to life. When we reached the 6th floor, we bolted straight to our door. Aaron shoved the key in, we slammed the door behind us, locked it, then threw the second deadbolt across. The cops didn't come upstairs. When they finally arrived almost 2 hours later, they didn't even get out of the car. Just sat there in their cruiser, engine running, and beeped the horn like we'd ordered takeout. Aaron went down to talk to them. I watched from the window, arms crossed, stomach tight with anger and fear. When he came back, his hands were shaking. He looked like he might throw up. "They said," he started, voice cracking, "it's not illegal to be naked, not inside the building. And unless he actually breaks into our apartment." "They won't do anything?" I asked, disbelief twisting in my chest. "They said," he rubbed his mouth like the words tasted bitter, "you live in Hartley, get used to it." We didn't sleep that night. We shoved a chair under the doorknob like a barricade would actually hold. I brought the biggest kitchen knife into the bathroom with me. Every creak in the floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the window panes made our hearts jump. Aaron barely left the apartment for the next few days. We filed a complaint with the landlord. Heard nothing back. Ray was still there, still ranting from his corner, still selling fruit no one bought, still watching. But now we noticed things we hadn't before. Tiny scratches around our doorframe, like someone had been working at it with something sharp. A hallway light that flickered and died and was never replaced. An old, rusted fruit peeler sitting just outside our door one morning like it had been placed there. The final straw came about a week later. We were in bed. Midnight, trying to force ourselves into some semblance of a routine, some kind of normal. Then, click. A sound outside, very faint. We both sat up instantly. It was the hallway light, the one just outside our door. It flickered once, then went out completely. Then came the sound, soft, metallic, jingling, like keys, or someone trying to pick a lock. Aaron grabbed the crowbar again. I grabbed my phone, not to call anyone, just to see. I turned on the camera app and crept toward the door, careful not to make a sound. I leaned in slowly, looked through the peephole, but there wasn't an eye this time. There was a phone. Someone had taped a cell phone to the outside of the peephole. The camera lens pointed straight at us. Recording. I stepped back, heart pounding in my throat. "We're done," I said. We moved out within 2 weeks, found a place across town, paid more than we could afford. We didn't care. I never worked another solo night shift again. Sometimes we still pass by that block, the fruit stand is still there. And Ray, he's still out front, waving fruit, yelling nonsense, watching. And every now and then, I think about that night. What if Aaron hadn't checked the peephole? What if he'd just opened the door thinking it was me? What if Ray had gotten inside? No one would have heard us. No one would have come. Because in Hartley, they told us to get used to it. I always thought our neighborhood was quiet. Not the TV-perfect suburb kind where everyone bakes pies and organizes block parties, but still, the kind of place where you wave to the guy mowing his lawn, chat briefly with the lady 2 doors down while walking your dog, and where locking your door felt more like habit than necessity. Our house sits at the tail end of a cul-de-sac in a medium-sized town east of Phoenix, Arizona. Dry heat, brutal summers, or as Marcus, my fiancé, likes to call it, Satan's personal sauna. We moved here 3 years ago, back when the housing market hadn't completely lost its mind. We thought we'd found a little pocket of peace, tucked away from city crime and chaos. And honestly, it was. At least until last summer. At the time, I was between jobs, not by choice. The marketing agency I worked for folded without warning, and with the job market tightening like a noose, I was stuck in a loop of rejection emails and stale job boards. Marcus, who teaches 8th grade at the local middle school, had picked up a summer school gig, which meant he was gone till late afternoon most days. My little brother, Tyler, had moved in temporarily. He works night shifts for the county sheriff's department and was just crashing with us until his new apartment was ready. Most days I'd divide my time between applying for jobs at the public library, because our AC was too weak to sit home in, and helping my dad do inventory at his auto parts shop. That Thursday, I remember, was miserably hot. One of those days where even the breeze feels like it came out of a hairdryer. I spent close to 3 hours melting on a sticky plastic chair at the library, scrolling through Indeed and LinkedIn until I couldn't stand it anymore. Nothing. Just more, "We regret to inform you's waiting in my inbox." By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was just past 4 p.m. The street shimmered under the weight of the heat, like everything was wrapped in plastic wrap. Bailey, our dog, a hyper-blue heeler pit mix with more guts than brains, practically tackled me at the door like I'd been gone a week. She's a sweetheart with us, but with strangers? Demon mode. She growls first, asks questions never. The house was quiet. Marcus wouldn't be home for another hour or so, and Tyler had left a note on the kitchen counter. Overtime, might crash at the station. So it was just me and Bailey. I let her out back to burn some energy while I went upstairs and started filling the tub. Not for a shower, no, not in this heat. Showers were useless. I needed to submerge. I grabbed my Bluetooth speaker, queued up some Led Zeppelin, tossed a magazine on the sink, and finally sank into the bath. The water wasn't even that cold, but after a day like this, it felt like a blessing. About 15 minutes in, just as Ramble On was building up, Bailey growled. Not her usual, someone's passing by growl. This was different, deep, primal, like she sensed a threat. I hit pause. "Bailey," I called, sitting up straighter in the water. A beat passed, then all hell broke loose. Snarling, barking, loud, vicious. Her nails scrambled across tile as she launched into a run. I sat frozen, heart hammering against my ribs. Then, clear as day, I heard a voice. A man's voice. Not shouting, not clear, but definitely startled. That low, breathy, "oh shit" you let out when something catches you completely off guard. My blood ran cold. I couldn't move, naked, vulnerable, and completely unarmed. The bathroom door was shut, but not locked. I was upstairs. Bailey had been in the kitchen, downstairs. If someone had come through the front or back door, she'd have been the first to see them. Now she was chasing them. Then came the crash, metallic. Something toppled over, maybe the dish rack or the bar stool. "Get off me!" the man screamed. My stomach dropped. That wasn't Bailey barking at the TV or a squirrel. That was her going ballistic. Someone was in our house. Someone real. And Bailey was tearing into him. I scrambled out of the tub, water sloshing over the edge, leaving a wet trail across the tile as my feet slipped against the floor. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out every rational thought. I grabbed my phone from the bathroom counter with shaking, dripping hands, fumbled it twice, and finally managed to hit 911. The second the dispatcher answered, I cut her off. "There's someone in my house," I gasped. "My dog's attacking him, I think. Please send help. Hurry." She kept me on the line, her voice calm, almost too calm. "Stay with me. Units are on the way. Are you safe?" I was halfway into a pair of old gym shorts, trying to shove my damp legs through the holes without falling over, yanking a hoodie over my head when I heard it. Slam. The back door. Bailey's barking suddenly dropped off, then picked up again, louder this time and more frantic. She was chasing him. "Oh my God," I muttered into the phone, more for show than anything, but it made me feel a little less powerless. I left the bathroom light on, barefoot, still soaked, and crept down the stairs like every creak could give me away. The kitchen was a mess, stool knocked over, a drawer half open, one of Bailey's bowls flipped. I edged toward the window above the sink and peeked out. Bailey was pacing along the back fence line, her chest heaving, tail high, body tense like a coiled spring. Whoever it was had bolted straight through our yard. A few minutes later, I saw the flashing lights. 2 patrol cars pulled up at the curb, fast and silent, followed by a black unmarked sedan. The sedan parked halfway over the curb. That's when I realized, Tyler. He must have heard the call come through the scanner and rerouted straight here. He stepped out of the sedan in uniform, and for a second I didn't even recognize him. Seeing him like that, gun holstered, face tight, it made him feel like a stranger. He walked straight past the cruiser, saw the busted screen door, saw me standing behind the glass in wet clothes with a bat in my hand, and his face went pale. He didn't knock, just opened the door and stepped inside. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I think he found the fake rock," I said quietly. "The one by the AC unit." Tyler ran a hand down his face. "Jesus, El, we talked about that rock." "I know," I whispered, shame crawling up my neck like a sunburn. I didn't think. No one ever does," he said, softer now. "Not until something happens." The guy they caught couldn't have been more than 5'8", maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. No shirt, badly sunburned, and twitching like a live wire. He was bleeding from at least 3 spots, his calf, his side, and 1 deep puncture on his forearm. Bailey hadn't held back. The EMTs patched him up enough to speak. He was still dazed, barely coherent. Meth, maybe spice. Tyler guessed both. No weapon, just a grimy backpack and a screwdriver. He told the officers he thought the house was empty, claimed he was just looking for stuff to pawn. Said he didn't mean to hurt anyone, didn't know we had a dog, said he just wanted a quick score. But none of that stopped my hands from shaking that night, or for several nights after. Everything changed after that. We installed a full security camera system, front and back, replaced the fake rock with a real lockbox, reinforced the back door with a steel bar, new blinds on every window. I couldn't fall asleep unless Bailey was curled right up against the bed. We started keeping 1 handgun in the nightstand, another locked in a coded safe in the kitchen. Tyler offered to move back in full-time, said he didn't feel right leaving us alone after what happened. I said no. Marcus wasn't thrilled, but I appreciated it. Tyler took me to the range instead, taught me how to handle both guns safely. It's been nearly a year now. On the 14th of every month, Bailey gets a special dinner. We call it her Hero Day. Steak, mashed sweet potato, and a few bites of Marcus's hamburger bun. She earned it. Some nights, I still wake up to imagined footsteps creaking on the stairs or a door handle rattling faintly. Probably the fridge or the ice maker. Probably. But I keep the bat next to the bed anyway, because now I know. Even in a quiet neighborhood, evil doesn't always knock. Sometimes it just walks right in. I grew up on a quiet little street called Birchwood Lane, tucked away in a forgotten corner of Marlowe's Bluff, a sleepy town resting on the eastern edge of the Caribbean. The kind of place you'd never find in a brochure, let alone a tourist map. The houses were modest, most painted in sun-faded pastels with rusting gates that groaned when you pushed them open, and fences stitched back together with wire and hope. Bougainvillea crept over everything, walls, windows, power lines, like nosy aunties trying to listen in on your business. The people were mostly retired couples or single moms working 2 or 3 jobs, faces worn out from years of holding everything together. Life was slow, predictable, and safe. Safe in that easy way that made people leave their doors open until the sugarcane fields swallowed the sun. We weren't poor, not really, but we were definitely on the edge of just getting by. I was 11, all elbows and knees perpetually barefoot, and always coming home with dirt under my fingernails from digging holes in the yard looking for pirate treasure I was sure someone had buried 100 years ago. My mom worked night shifts as a nurse, always smelling like antiseptic and peppermint gum. My dad had moved to Trinidad when I was 6, and we only got the occasional phone call or a birthday card with a few crumpled bills inside. Most of my days after school were spent outside, riding my beat-up bike with one flat tire or playing pickup soccer barefoot with the neighborhood kids on the cracked asphalt. There was one house on Birchwood Lane that never fit in. Not because it was run down. No, the opposite, it was too perfect. A 2-story pale yellow mansion that rose up like a mirage. It had these fancy arched windows and a red tiled roof that caught the sun just right. The iron gate out front always looked half open, but something about it made you hesitate, like it was watching you. Marble statues stood in a neat row along the walkway like guards frozen mid-step, and the hedges were trimmed so precisely you'd think someone used nail scissors. That was the Morrow house. The family that lived there, the Morrows, were different. Not rude, not friendly either, just apart. The father, Mr. Louis Morrow, was barely a shadow. If you saw him, it was from behind, slipping into a black SUV with dark windows, wearing crisp white linen and those gold-rimmed glasses that made him look like some Caribbean Bond villain. His wife, Maria, was younger than him by a lot and always looked like she was listening for something. Eyes flicking side to side, voice barely above a whisper. They had 4 kids, all homeschooled. The youngest, Isabel, Izzy, we all called her, somehow became one of us. She was 5 when we first met. Small, like really small, with giant brown eyes and wild curls pulled into 2 fuzzy puffs. She asked questions constantly, like her brain couldn't shut up. She never wore shoes. And for some reason she treated our house like it was hers, walking in unannounced, plopping down at the kitchen table with my mom like she lived there. My mom never said no. Izzy had that way about her. It wasn't long before the neighborhood started talking, quietly. My mom and the other women whispered over laundry baskets and plastic chairs about how strange it was. It came to Izzy, her older brother Julian, tall, stiff, never smiled, just said, "Business." That's it. No follow-up, no details. We didn't press. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they weren't allowed to say. Supposedly, their dad traveled a lot, always had meetings. Didn't matter to us. We were more interested in who brought snacks. Then came Izzy's 6th birthday. They threw a party that made the rest of the block look like background noise. Giant inflatable castles, a real water slide, people in clown makeup juggling fire, and trays of food so fancy I didn't know what half of it was. Music blasted like a concert. Kids from other neighborhoods showed up like it was a festival. But my mom, she wouldn't let me go. Said she didn't know the parents, and there was something about them she didn't trust. I'd never seen her that firm. I remember standing just outside the gate, watching the chaos, the colors, the candy flying through the air, while I kicked rocks and felt the sting of being left out. The next morning, Izzy was back at our table, candy still stuck to her fingers, glitter in her hair like she'd wrestled a unicorn. Everything felt normal again. Days passed, weeks, until the night we heard the gunshots. It was a sticky, humid night around 10:45. We were outside playing flashlight tag, flipping the porch lights off, hiding in bushes, trying to scare each other. I was crouched behind a neighbor's plant pot when pop, 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 pop. A pause, then pop, 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 pop. 20, maybe more. So loud it rattled the windows and sent birds screeching into the sky. For a moment, the world stopped. Then chaos. Porch lights flared on. Doors slammed open. Parents screamed our names. I remember my mom bursting onto the porch and dragging me inside by the arm so hard I dropped my flashlight on the lawn. I heard screaming, barking, someone crying. Mr. Castillo, an ex-cop who always wore a badge on his cap like a memory, ran past our house wielding a wooden bat, heading straight for the Morrow place. Then we saw it. A black van, lights off, careened down the street. Fast, reckless. It clipped the corner of the sidewalk and nearly flattened a stray dog as it disappeared into the dark. From our window, I saw 3 men, all dressed in black, slip into the Morrow house like shadows returning home. And just like that, Birchwood Lane was never quiet again. One of the men had something slung over his back. A rifle, maybe, or some kind of long weapon. I couldn't tell through the panic. All I know is, it didn't look like it belonged to anyone who knocked politely. The Morrows' front door was wide open, the kind of open that made your stomach twist. Then came the scream, sharp and high and desperate. My mom yanked the curtain shut and didn't let me leave the house for 2 days. Not to play, not even to check the mail. What I remember next was chaos and sirens. Police cars arrived in waves. First the local squad, then unmarked ones, then what looked like feds. Finally an ambulance rolled up, but no one seemed to be rushing. That told me everything. The next morning, a cop in a worn button-up came to ask me questions. He knelt down, trying to look friendly, but I remember the way his jaw tensed when he asked, "Did Isabel ever say anything strange about her parents? Or did you ever see anything unusual at their house?" But I was a kid. I barely understood taxes, let alone criminal activity. I shrugged and said, she liked glitter, and she thought our fridge was haunted. That was all I had. I was more worried about whether my Wii remote had survived the fall when my mom dragged me inside. After that night, the Morrows disappeared, vanished, just like that. No goodbye, no moving trucks, no for sale sign. Their yellow mansion stood quiet and untouched like it was holding its breath. Dust started to collect in the windows. Grass grew tall enough to hide the base of the statues. Still, every now and then that same black van showed up again. Not often, once every few months. It had a different license plate each time, but we recognized the shape, the feeling it brought, a slow dread that crept under the skin. The men would knock on doors in pairs, calm, casual, but too polished. They'd flash badges that looked just a little off, not quite right. One of them asked my mom if she'd seen a little girl with curly hair and glittery shoes. My mom said no. She told me after she knew better than to say anything. Nobody on the street talked, not to those men, not to each other. Birchwood Lane, once full of lazy summer afternoons and laughter, went silent. Kids stayed indoors. Front porches that used to host domino games and gossip fell quiet. Some families moved away without warning. The air changed, like something had spoiled and we couldn't scrub it out. Time passed, years slipped by. The Morrow house crumbled slow. The vines grew thick, curling over the gates like they were trying to pull the house back into the earth. The yellow paint peeled in long, curling strips. The marble statues cracked and began to fall, as if even stone couldn't carry the weight of what they'd seen. I didn't think about Izzy for a long time. I'm 28 now. Still live in Marlowe's Bluff, just not on Birchwood. My mom retired and moved to Barbados, chasing the quiet she never got back. I run a small mechanic shop down by the port. Oil-stained hands, engine noise always in the background. Nothing fancy, but it pays the bills. Last month, I ran into Mr. Castillo, our old neighbor, the ex-cop, at a roadside bar. He looked older, tired in the eyes, but he still had that quiet watchfulness. After a couple drinks, I asked him what I'd never asked before. What really happened that night? He didn't answer at first, just stared at his rum like it might tell him what to say. Then he spoke, low, like even after all this time someone might still be listening. Louis Morrow wasn't in business, not the kind you want your name in, he said. He was a trafficker, high level, drugs, people, maybe both. He'd agreed to flip, turn on his suppliers, his whole network. DEA had him. That night was supposed to be the takedown, but someone got wind of it. They didn't let him talk. He paused. They put 3 in his head while he was eating dinner. Maria, his wife, was shot too. She survived barely. She's in custody now, somewhere up in the States, under protection. What about Julian? I asked, even though I think I already knew. Ran. Didn't get far. They found his body in a burned-out car 2 towns over. Other kids? They were split up. Witness protection, new names, new homes, scattered like dust. I hesitated, but the question sat on my chest like a brick. Is he? Mr. Castillo exhaled, slow and heavy. Last I heard, maybe Canada. Foster care. No one really knows. Not even the agency people. She'd be, what now, 22? 23? Different name, different life. Then he looked at me and said something that's stuck in my ribs ever since. I just hope she remembers who she really is, and that she stays safe. That night I went home and pulled out the old photo album I'd forgotten in the back of my closet. Dusty, faded, half the pages stuck together. I flipped through grainy prints of birthday cakes, soccer matches, crooked teeth, and scraped knees. Then I found it. Me and Izzy, standing by my front gate. She had one arm around my shoulders and the biggest grin, barefoot as always. There was glitter on her cheeks and a chocolate smear on her chin. Behind us, the yellow mansion peeked out through the hedge, still whole then, still alive. She looked so small. I sat there for a long time staring at that photo, wondering if she remembered Birchwood Lane, if she remembered me, if she still wore glitter in her hair, if she ever felt safe again. I heard recently that the old Morrow house is scheduled for demolition. Some resort wants to build luxury condos on the land. Progress, they call it. Part of me wants to sneak back one last time, just to see it, to stand in the spot where we used to play, to say goodbye to the ghost of a girl who once wandered barefoot into my kitchen like she belonged there. But another part of me, the part that still flinches when I hear sudden sirens, thinks maybe some places are better left alone. Some stories shouldn't be reopened. Some memories are safer locked in dust and silence. And so the yellow house waits, sagging, broken, forgotten. But if you walk down Birchwood Lane when the moon's hanging low and the wind skips through the cane fields just right, you might still hear it. The soft echo of a child's laughter, light and curious. And you'll wonder just for a second whatever happened to the little barefoot girl who called herself Izzy. Backed me into a corner. The company I worked for in Nevada had been hemorrhaging people for months. When they finally cut me loose, I didn't even get a proper goodbye, just an HR email and 2 weeks of severance. I got lucky though. A job offer came in barely a week later. Decent pay, stable hours, but it was all the way in Washington. I didn't have time to second guess it. So, last fall, with the desert heat finally starting to break, I boxed up my life, broke my lease, and headed north. I ended up in a rental house about 20 minutes outside a city called Brookhaven. Not its real name, but close enough. One of those quiet, postcard-perfect towns where the trees look like they've been painted onto the hills and strangers wave at you just for being alive. It had charm. People say that like it's a good thing. Personally, I would have traded all that charm for a deadbolt that didn't rattle in the frame. The house itself was this pale blue single-story place with a modest yard, a cracked stone walkway, and tall pine trees huddled together behind it like they were guarding something. The landlord, a soft-spoken guy in his 60s, had told me it was a bit older. Quirky, he said, but full of character. I didn't care about character. I just wanted somewhere that didn't leak, had Wi-Fi, and let me sleep through the night. The first 2 nights were fine. Just me and a mountain of boxes. I spent the time unpacking, figuring out the best grocery store, and testing the commute to work without needing Google Maps. It felt manageable, like I was in control again. On the 3rd night, after a long day of orientation at the new job, I decided to set up the TV in my bedroom. Nothing fancy. Just wanted to veg out with something brainless and forget about the unpacked boxes still choking the hallway. I was on the floor halfway through assembling the stand when I heard it. At first it was soft, barely a sound, like something brushing lightly against the wood floor. I paused, screwdriver in hand, and waited. It was probably just the old house shifting, I told myself. These places always made weird noises. Then it happened again, louder this time. A distinct scraping sound like something heavy being dragged against the floorboards. It was coming from the opposite end of the house. I held my breath. Then footsteps. Actual, heavy, unmistakable footsteps. One after another, moving from the back of the house toward the dining room. I stood slowly. My hands were shaking and I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. The air felt thick, charged, like before a thunderstorm. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew what I was hearing wasn't wind or pipes. Then the back door creaked open. I froze in the hallway, 5 steps from the dining room. My feet wouldn't move. It was like my body had short-circuited. A moment later, the footsteps retreated. Fast. Then the door again. Creak. Slam. He was gone. I didn't run after him. I couldn't. I just stood there like a deer in headlights. But something kicked in eventually. Maybe instinct, maybe adrenaline, and I bolted to the side window overlooking the backyard. I saw him. Not running, but walking away with purpose. He had broad shoulders, messy brown hair, and this casual stride, like he didn't care that I'd seen him. His face was average, unremarkable, the kind that disappears in crowds, but I burned it into memory anyway. He never looked back. I checked the back door. It wasn't busted. No marks, no signs of forced entry. Had I forgotten to lock it? Or was he just good at what he did? I called the police, gave them everything I could. Description, timeline, the whole bit. No prints, no signs of entry, no cameras, since I hadn't gotten around to installing them yet. The officers were polite, professional, but I could tell from their tone they weren't optimistic. Unless he came back and did something worse, they probably weren't going to find him. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, porch light blazing, gripping an old baseball bat I found in the garage. Every creak felt like a footstep. Every gust of wind, a whisper. 2 days later, I tried to reclaim some normalcy. It was early afternoon, warm for October. I was out by the curb raking up pine needles, telling myself that the guy had picked the wrong house. Maybe he was high or confused. Maybe it was some twisted misunderstanding. The street was quiet. A few cars rolled by. Someone's dog barked down the block. I started to believe it was over. That's when I saw him again. Same messy brown hair. Same deliberate stride. He was walking straight down the road toward me like he lived there. My stomach dropped. I told myself it wasn't him. It couldn't be. But every step he took pulled that hope apart. He stopped right in front of my driveway and smiled like we were neighbors. "Hey," he said casually, "you just move in?" My hands tightened around the rake handle. My voice came out slower than I meant it to. "Yeah, just last week." He nodded. "Cool." And just like that, he kept walking. I live just down the road, like 5 houses that way. He pointed with a casual flick of his wrist down the quiet, tree-lined street, where the pavement shimmered slightly in the afternoon sun. Figured I'd come by and say hi. He said it like we were total strangers. Polite, friendly, normal. But my gut twisted. I knew it was him, the man I saw walking away from my house that night. I forced a smile and nodded, knuckles tight around the wooden rake handle. Nice to meet you. Same. Name's Trevor. He offered his hand like we were neighbors meeting over borrowed tools, like everything was fine. I shook it. His grip was firm, confident, unremarkable, too unremarkable. No nervous twitch, no hint of guilt, just calm, neighborly ease. It was almost enough to make me question myself, almost. Why would he come up to me if he knew I'd seen him? Why risk it? We chatted briefly, him doing most of the talking. Something about how garbage pickup days rotate on holidays, something about a community